This film is the creation of some 150 Canadians who, like their grandparents, volunteered for war, the Great War. Not to fight it, but to remember it in an unforgettable way. It begins with an ad.
CBC is recruiting descendants of those who fought the Great War for a massive reenactment. You'll be trained for battle before heading off for the trenches in Europe. Enlist now at cbc.ca/Great War.
The response is stunning. 6,500 apply from every corner of Canada, sending us photographs and letters, journals from the historic Battle of Vimy Ridge, videos of home.
I left from this spot here, and I can look behind me and see this amazing scenery we had. This is what John had left from.
The resemblance to grandfathers is sometimes startling. Having a special talent helps get you in. George Muggleton has the allure of being a piper, and to top it off, he discovers his grandfather's uniform fits to a T.
There's a rose that grows in no man's land.
Sandy Gow sings a Great War ballad. To voyage to Europe and into the past, we picked 14 to follow in their grandparents' footsteps. We put them through a First World War training camp. They come to battlefields where their grandparents fought, to cemeteries where they are buried, to memorials where they are remembered. Then in Montreal, the final 150 descendants are chosen, trained, and become an army. To fight their first battle, they come to a meadow that harks back to the ground where the Canadians endure the first gas attack. They are joined by actors to play Sandy Gow's ancestor, Colonel John McCrae. Greg Kelly's great-grandfather, Canon Frederick Scott.
God be with you.
And Kate Sarsfield's relative, Talbot Papineau. Papineau's story unfolds in a remarkable series of letters. A charismatic captain's love of country, but also for a young sculptress he would never meet. A man who might have been prime minister, but who with thousands of others chooses a soldier's path to create a country.
Fire at will!
We supply an air force and real machine guns. We ask them to bring the Great War alive like it's never been done before. The saga of 325,000 who fought, a staggering 2/3 of whom are killed or wounded. And they did. The towering tribute at Vimy is serene and beautiful, but for the thousands of Canadians who have family buried here, the simple gravestone is more meaningful. As disturbing even now as the telegram must have been, declaring the death of my grandfather's younger brother. Adrian was 26. In northern Belgium, in the city of Ypres, at sunset, all the traffic is stopped through this ancient passage into the city, not just on Remembrance Day, but every night. Here at the Menin Gate, buglers lead a ceremony to honor soldiers of the British Empire killed in the Great War against Germany. Inscribed are the names of those who fought and died in Belgium, but whose bodies were never found. There are 6,940 Canadian names chiseled into these towering walls. It's an emotional moment for Kate Sarsfield. She's descended from a Canadian hero, Talbot Papineau. At the end of the ceremony, a British historian tells her that such is his admiration for the Canadian that he named one of his children after Papineau.
The thing about, to me, that's always interested me about Talbot Papineau is his letters. They are amongst the most poignant and detailed of any Canadian serviceman in the Great War. To me, they say more about the average soldier's experience at the front than just about anything else that I've read.
He had promised his mother that he would never sugarcoat anything that had been going on around him, and that he would always be very honest with her, and that he at least owed her that.
The worst day was May 8th, and we had about 450 casualties. I had the man on each side of me killed.
From the front, almost daily, Papineau writes his mother Caroline and B. Fox, a 25-year-old Philadelphia sculptress. Preserved in Canada's archives, the letters have a special power for war historians such as Lieutenant Colonel Roman Yaramovitz. Their value is in their immediacy, written not years later, but scribbled on the eve and aftermath of battles. They are filled with the power and eloquence of a Homer writing the Iliad.
This sounds romantic, but I think it's also genuine. Life is uncertain and very short, and a death with honor and distinction should be a source of pride. I think in many ways it sums up his life.
For Kate Sarsfield and 13 other descendants, the journey back in time starts with a bus ride into the English countryside, en route to a military training camp straight out of the Great War. Their initiation begins with a no-nonsense sergeant with the unmistakable accent of British authority.
Right, my name's Taff Gillingham. As far as you're concerned, that's Sergeant Gillingham. So if you ever address me, you address me as Sergeant, never Sir. This is Company Sergeant Major Pryor, who you will only ever address as Sir. This is the last few minutes of peace and tranquility you're going to get. Carry on.
Squad, form a straight line facing me on his left. Now. Quickly, quickly. Feet together, arms by your sides, feet at an angle approximately 45 degrees. Squad. Attain. Shut. Good. In something resembling an orderly fashion, go through that gate. Off you go.
Everything you've got, civvy, the whole lot, mobile phones, everything you're wearing goes in the bin bag. And I mean everything. 21st century disappears for the next couple of days. Do you understand? Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
Yes, what?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Corporal.
You okay?
Yeah. All wool, all the time.
That's it.
Does it scratch? Does it scratch?
It's not bad.
No. Yeah. I suspect I'm gonna be scratching.
Oh, yeah.
Steve Thompson is an Army captain, a veteran of peacekeeping missions. To absorb his grandfather's experience, here he's taken a reduction in rank to private to try and understand his grandfather's private hell.
For me, it's the whole journey is trying to understand my grandfather Dana better. Why did he come back after he was injured the first time?
There you go.
As if we actually just stepped right into 1915, 16.
How is that called? It's corned beef. Be brave, be brave.
That is brave.
Yeah.
You like your jam?
Yeah.
All right.
That's all I have to eat.
Nick Stanger's a vegetarian, a difficult choice in 1914.
Red stuff. Red stuff.
Serial number 34730. That is your rifle. Do not lose it. Mr. Stanger.
Rifle number 13413.
That is your rifle. Do not lose it.
Scott Truman teaches high school history in British Columbia. His great-uncle Jack, from Dragon Lake, British Columbia, was one of 6 brothers who went off to war.
It totally stunned me that so many of my great-uncles went off to do this. I remember reading one of their letters, and they said that there was 2 sides of life as a soldier. One was very monotonous and boring, and you're waiting for someone to attack, but at the same time, you're not sure if you want them to.
Squad 2. You again, bend your left elbow more. Keep going, keep going.
Patrice Blais' grandfather was Ernest Lamarche. He fought with the Royal 22nd Regiment, the famous Vendus. Like Patrice, the Vendus were a minority, the only French-speaking regiment in a 5 million strong British army.
Hand like that. Put the right
Patrice is determined to do the memory of his grandfather proud, but he's not a natural soldier.
Okay. That's it, yeah. And it needs to be there.
Ce voyage, c'est pratiquement un pèlerinage familial, enfin qu'on pouvait dire, savoir que mon grand-père Ernest Lamarche a pris le même chemin qu'on prend 90 ans plus tard.
Hand should be gripping at the small leg.
C'est comme si tous les gens, les soldats qui étaient dans la guerre, ils sont comme parmi nous, puis qu'il y en a qui nous regardent encore.
Lift it, lift it, lift it. Stop. Some of you are perfect, some less so. Push it up onto the shoulder. That's better. Slope arms. 1.
Like many of their grandparents, the Canadians feel they are being treated as colonial cannon fodder.
As it comes down like that. No, that wasn't very good.
They grind their teeth and try hard to keep insubordination under control.
Don't move it until I tell you to. Squad 3. Don't change your hands.
But we're being almost far too respectful. We didn't have a reputation as terribly respectful.
No.
I remember my great-great-grandfather in his book, he would say that when generals would come by and after they would kind of, laugh at them a bit.
When you take them off.
I would never do that.
Stephen Murray's parents moved to the U.S., and Murray grew up not knowing a lot about his great-grandfather, Will Byrd, one of the Great War's great characters. Byrd kept a secret journal of the war. It was forbidden. Byrd kept one anyway.
The majority of these stories, even though they're very terrible, there's a lot of very funny moments throughout this entire book. And I just don't understand from reading these stories how he was still alive after the hell that he went through.
It was all so very Canadian. Humor to keep the horror at bay.
So this is one of the...
Kate Sarsfield has come to Oxford to piece together the story of her family's hero, Talbot Papineau.
From his college.
Here at Oxford University, before the war, he was one of Canada's first Rhodes Scholars. Papineau is a canoeist, a lawyer, a hockey player, a citizen soldier who dreamed of becoming Prime Minister one day.
His mother, Caroline, was a descendant of one of the signers of the U.S. Declaration of Independence. And his father was the grandson of Louis-Joseph Papineau, who led the Lower Canada Rebellion. He was bilingual, fluent in French and English. My mom just told me that he was really active on the rowing team. And she showed me a couple of pictures when he was on the water, but...
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It was nice. Well, that hasn't changed.
Graduate student Michael Talbot knows the Papineau story well, especially Papineau's role making hockey history, leading the Oxford Canadians.
Talbot's role in that was to help found the team, because he was on the first team. And what's particularly noteworthy is that they're wearing the Canadian maple leaf. It's red.
Yeah.
And this is the first Team Canada. They were the first European champions, and they were seen in Europe as representative of Canada.
I am, before all, a Canadian. I want to see a Canadian pride based on substantial achievements and not on some supercilious sense of self-satisfaction we have borrowed from England.
One of the interesting things is that they agreed that they'd have a dinner where they'd all get back together again every 5 years. Unfortunately, when they agreed to do this, the first dinner was scheduled for 1916. And by that time, of course, they were all pretty much signed up and at war, and of course, several of them were dead by then.
Left, right, left, right, left, right, left. Platoon may march at ease. Sling your rifles over your right shoulder.
Taft Gillingham's great-uncle led these very same drills 90 years ago. His great-uncle had moved to Canada and joined the Canadian Army when war broke out.
Right, left.
His name is among the fallen, inscribed on the Vimy Memorial. To their amazement, the Canadians are arriving to train beside the ancient ruins of Stonehenge. War historian Lieutenant Colonel Roman Yaramovitz brings them back to 1914.
This is a large plain. In fact, it's the biggest training area in England. Your ancestors came here, quite keen to train, and they arrived to a tent city, probably right over there. And things looked wonderful.
Papineau's first letters home reflect how the Army of Canadian Volunteers is not finding the soldier business as easy as it looks.
Good morning, gentlemen. Now listen in. We have here a new company officer, Captain Papineau. He will now be taking you for your morning drill session. Do you understand?
Yes, Corporal.
Very good.
I seem to get along well with the men, but I make a good many mistakes in drill, which is most annoying.
Right turn. Left turn. Left turn. Company at ease.
The other day, I tied my platoon all up and had an awful time getting it straightened out.
Right turn. Left turn. Left turn. Come on, baby!
The sun was shining, golden afternoons, warm, sweet grass, the smell of hay. How romantic can you get? And then it rained and wouldn't stop raining. The sucking mud sticking to everything that you touched. And there's no place to dry your clothes, and there's nothing quite as horrible as the smell of wet wool. And you get pretty depressed. Great victories are coming from the front, and you're not there. You're doing important things like dying in Salisbury from pneumonia. We're losing 8 men a day.
Stephen Murray's great-grandfather, Nova Scotia's Will Bird, fights with Montreal's Black Watch, the Royal Highlanders of Canada. With the camp overflowing, Bird and his mates are housed in stables.
There's a friend of his who gets this terrible cold, vomiting through the night, you know, not being able to sleep, and they call for a doctor. They want an ambulance to come and take him out. It doesn't come till the next afternoon. The guy ends up dying in the morning. So Bird's good friend Christensen is very angered by this. So he writes this very angry letter to the young man's parents saying, this is how he died, this is why he died. And the letter never made it because the Army stopped it.
For his insubordination, Christensen is given 14 days of field punishment number 1. The soldier is tied to a cartwheel and left exposed to the elements.
We went and cut the fellow loose. Along came the sergeant major roaring threats. None of us ran. We simply stayed and defied him.
You listen here. You ever subject another one of our men to that kind of punishment, sooner or later we're gonna get you. Tie you to that cartwheel and send you downhill.
In acts of insubordination, in a refusal to blindly follow authority, the faint outlines of a new Canadian army are emerging. A truly Canadian army, an army based not so much on who you know, but on how well you do the job. But young men still have to be goaded into killing other young men wearing different uniforms. Stonehenge murmurs with mystery. But there is no secret to what happened at these ruins during the Great War. Young Canadians are brought here by the tens of thousands and taught the art of war.
So the training, the preparation to kill young boys your age you've never met, who probably look a lot like you with flaxen hair from Saxony, it's a challenge. We'll have to get you to dislike them for some reason. We'll have to create stories about how evil they really are, of things they might do to our nurses should they capture them. Anything to get the blood boiling. I mean, young men and women are resilient. You're optimistic. You don't think you'll die. That's why I can eventually convince you to go across the channel and go into a filthy trench and attack Germans. I'll get you to charge machine guns. The young men think they're immortal. And it's the job of sergeants and officers to assure them that's true. There isn't a bullet made that'll kill you, lads. You'll make it.
Aside from tens of thousands working in war industries back home, women play another critical role in the war, keeping the men alive, keeping their spirits up. In recognition, they are made officers.
The men keep calling us their angels, and I think that was very much true of the nurses in the First World War. And the headdress may have something to do with it, too.
Kelly O'Donnell's great-aunt was a frontline nurse.
I'm very proud of her. Leaving small-town Ontario for the worlds of war in Europe. In her letters, she writes about the sadness of losing these boys, as she calls them, these 20-year-old boys, and their great suffering. But more so, she notes their courage. When they're suffering, they apologize for taking too much of her time. This is before they die.
One here and 1, 2 here.
Sandy Gow's great-aunt was also a nurse, but for now the support she gives is more traditional.
We've known them about 24 hours now, and already I feel responsible for about every one of them every time they go out. And even like just in the morning we're getting ready and we're trying to fix their buttons and get their uniform straight. I mean, you're just kind of like, oh, you know, our boys, look what they're doing.
Precisely.
We're kind of proud of them a little bit, you know?
Pull in again the other side. Pull out.
I think it's a little bit different for us because for a lot of it we're on the sidelines and we're sort of watching them and sort of this constant concern for how they're doing.
Don't get injured before you make it across.
Seeing them, especially when they've got the weapons and when they're stanced and they're in their uniforms, it's just, there's something kind of shiver goes through you and you're going, oh my gosh, they're doing it.
Some find it deeply disturbing when they realize what their grandparents went through. All of the training has the most serious of purposes. It is all about learning how to avoid being killed and learning how to kill.
Don't go for the chest. Too many ribs, too many bones up there. You want to get him there, just under the belt buckle. It's all nice, soft and squidgy there. You stick him in the ribs, the blade gets stuck behind the bayonet. It's very embarrassing and a dead German stuck on the end of your rifle. Very inconvenient. Go for the soft, squidgy bits. Does most damage. Even if you don't kill him, he'll die of peritonitis later. You're going to pull the rifle back and it's... Ah! On guard. Drop the point a bit more.
Greg Kiely is stunned by what he's going through. He had two relatives at the front. One was Harry, close in age, and a McGill graduate like Greg, also drawn to a career in law. Before the law, there is no greater crime than murder, yet these young men, like millions of others, are being trained to kill. Greg is surprised there isn't more trauma.
I can't understand why some of them probably did get shell shocked. There's just nothing to prepare you for that. I don't think you can really be trained to become a killer through all the training that you do. It's just on the spot, it would have been something scary.
The diamond formation is the best formation you can use in offense and defense, and I will show you why. Enemy behind! Excellent. You see how quickly that happened?
Question, sir.
Yeah.
What's the contingency if your officer falls down?
Lieutenant gets killed, a sergeant takes over, sergeant gets killed, and the corporals, and so on. You need someone just to seize it and get things moving again. You lose the impetus, you've had it. Now what we need here is an officer to give us some field signals. That means enemy in sight. If there's a lot of them, we're in serious trouble now. They will come thick and fast, these orders. In the battle situation, you probably wouldn't hear every single order.
Enemy behind! Enemy behind! Enemy 100 yards! Right down! Rapid fire!
Well done. Very good indeed.
Jason Prince's great uncle was killed at the Battle of the Somme, and his body never found. Jason finds these kill or be killed maneuvers unsettling.
The diamond formation, we got 9 or 10 guys, and our job is to look around and see if anybody's going to kill us and where they're going to kill us from. And as soon as we see somebody or anything, we're all responsible to identify it, tell the commanding officer, and then defend ourselves. Just that feeling of having to do that every day, or I just can't imagine what it would be like to be the target. It's brutal. This whole thing came through my whole body, and I just started shaking, weeping. It's like you don't know when, any second, it's over. And I can't imagine what that would be like. I can't imagine just living like for years, just feeling that. It's insane.
The Canadians train hard, but they party hard too. The Bustard Inn is still here, a Great War watering hole for the Canadians. This is their last night of peace. Tomorrow they follow in the shadow of their grandparents. They will cross the English Channel to France, Belgium, and the killing grounds of the Great War.
I think there would have been great excitement crossing the channel. I think that they would have felt this great sense of enthusiasm.
It had a sense of dread
involved in the excitement. The cliffs of Dover, I mean, that's the one thing that we're all seeming to talk about. It's a very poignant and very stirring image. These massive white cliffs behind us. The sense of dread must have been this mixture, because at this point they're very well trained. They have some sense of what they are as a group, but they have no idea what they're going to.
I'm pretty sure that my grandfather, you know, he must also have been wondering, is this the last time that I'm on a boat? Am I going to be this unlucky person who's going to be like struck down by, you know, a random bullet that's been shot? Yeah. It's quite emotional, this crossing.
It was very powerful for me to look at the cliffs and understand when they look at the cliffs, it's the last thing that they see in this strange sort of assembly line with the men going over, and the only thing coming back are wounded men. If you're dead, you stay there.
This train was built in 1916 on a deliberate small scale, designed to bring soldiers and nurses and supplies to the front. It will return with the blind, the crippled, and the almost dead. Like their grandparents, they don't know what's going to happen. The train is taking them into the past. They will fall asleep in darkness and drizzle to wake in the nightmare of 1914. They are going to the front and war. Some will find themselves in the middle of Talbot Papineau's first raid across no man's land.
Corporal Lake! Corporal Lake, we need a working party. Need it now. Come on, move yourselves. Let's get all these fellas out of there. Let's get them selling. Come on, come on. Out. Carrying party needed. Carrying party. Battle order.
Right, straight down, women, no back chain.
Come on, lads, move it! Where's your equipment? Come on, move yourselves tonight. Come on, lads, come on! Right, coach, you feel you need them. Now. I want to see bodies coming out this tent right now. Get yourself sorted out. Don't forget your gas mask. Anybody not got a rifle? Rifle? Didn't leave webbing yet, gas suit? Are we downhearted? No, sir. No, sir. Easy, will be. Right. Shovel. Yes, sir.
Papineau promised to write his mother often and spare her nothing. He told her he found his first encounter with war thrilling.
We meet our guides, and in the dark, in a single file, we are led silently across the fields. All about is the sharp crack of rifle fire. We creep up to the opening of the trench, and one by one, jump in. I have not been badly frightened yet. That will come, I suppose.
Heads down.
This is so much like a fête de nuit, a thunderstorm and duck shooting, that I positively like it.
The people here, their job is to defend the front line. Your job is to help make it safer for them. At night, it's safe to move around in the trench. It's safe for sentries to stand with their heads over the top because no one can see them. What shows up is movement. And you're out in no man's land and a flare goes up. The minute it goes up, you freeze. Doesn't matter what you're doing, you freeze. It's movement that they're looking for. Go on, there you go, up you get.
Up you get.
Clear.
While some are sent to fill sandbags, others are chosen to sneak across no man's land, break down a German trench, and get back in one piece.
You won't be taking equipment or rifles.
Yeah. You will have no identification with you whatsoever.
Everything you've got needs to come off.
And be held here. There's a further dirt and mud.
Dear mother, I was pretty scared. My stomach seemed hollow. I called my men, and we fell into line, and we began creeping forward, flat on our bellies. We stood for a moment, exposed. And then suddenly we were all rushing forward. My legs caught in barbed wire, but I stumbled through somehow. I set my fuse and hurled my bomb ahead of me. From that moment, all hell broke loose. I never thought there could be such noise. A German was silhouetted, and I saw the flash of his rifle. He disappeared. I said to myself, I've shot him. I lay flat and began to reload. I thought, the attack has failed. I am alone. I will never get out. Then I saw Charlie coming. I had got a cartridge home by this time, and Charlie and I went over the edge into the German trench. It was deep and narrow, beautifully built. The German was lying in front of me.
Okay, he's alive. Watch him.
The German machine guns were going like mad. We began to pull down some of the parapet and sandbags. We climbed out and made a run for our own line. I beat it across the open, expecting to get it any minute. I was so exhausted I wobbled from side to side in the mud. I reached home and dived for cover. The stretcher bearers were carrying the wounded. The last party got halfway, then dropped their stretcher and ran. With a couple of volunteers, we rescued the man and got everyone back in one piece. I was tired, but mostly glad to be back.
The Great War descendants have had their first trial by fire. They are still a bit shell-shocked.
Last night was the pinnacle, I guess you could say, of the whole event. The first 30 seconds of them screaming and yelling, the bugle going off, I was still kind of dreaming, and I didn't know like where any of my stuff was, tripping over people. You said Draco, too?
John Moses is a Mohawk from the Grand River in Ontario. His great-uncle fought and died in the Great War.
There's incoming fire, incoming artillery. It certainly gives you appreciation of what our ancestors went through. It leaves you speechless for a split second at least.
For me, it was like we'd gone back in time, and everything that we'd known all our lives didn't exist. Basically, it made me realize that it was a game of chance for these guys. I mean, if you had the calm nerve, if you had all the skills in the world, there's no guarantee that you'd make it to the next day. And that's what hit me. It's the fact that whether you were, filling sandbags or running down with stretchers or whatever it was, that may be the last thing you ever do in your life. You could be dead the next day.
Brandon Honey is a corporal in today's Canadian Army. His great-uncle was killed on the Western Front.
I found last night that I was using some of the modern-day skills that I've learned. I'm thinking the whole time, like, can they see me? Can they see me? When you're coming back into the trenches, you've just survived the enemy lines. You have to get past your own sentries because they're jumpy. They're waiting for the next attack, and you have to come up to them without spooking them and taking a round from one of your own troops. You feel very mortal after you come in.
It's a big eye-opener because in 3 days, all that we've lived, it's impossible to imagine, and some people have experienced that for years.
It was magnificent. And I don't mean that in a good way, I just mean it was magnificent. It was awe-inspiring. The sort of strange, sort of surreal beauty, the magnificence of the noise, the action, the coordination. And then coupled with the camaraderie that we've already felt, we haven't been together very long, but already there's a real closeness in the group. After months of training together, how much closer would we be? And is that the reason my grandfather came back? He came back for his friends.
When it ended,
I really started thinking about my grandfather as if he had just died or something, and thinking about how much it was an experience for him and how it's kind of still in me somehow.
Greg Kiely is the great-grandson of Canon Frederick Scott, chaplain of the 1st Canadian Division. The Reverend Scott appears to have been a popular, even legendary figure in Canada's Army. Scott led services in this ancient church.
He doesn't look at all the negative things, how everything's so dark and gloomy. He'll say, well, yeah, I'm walking through all this mud, but then there's a bird chirping. There's some buds coming out, and you can see the beauty of nature that will, you know, arise after this hellhole is done with.
Are you finding yourself there, son? Well, felt the spirit. God be with you.
He was an intelligent, sensitive man. He came here to talk. I think the key word is talk, not just preach at the men. They were expecting to be told about prayer and not sinning and all the things that priests should talk about, but he'd talk about life and talk about just being a decent human being. And they knew he was serious because he was a perfect example. You know, Scott, the perfect officer, who never ate before the men ate, never went to bed until the last man had been bedded down in a dry cot. Sometimes found kneeling next to a parapet or a sandbag in the trenches, wet, trying to sleep lest than take away a soldier's dry cot. He was a role model that inspired in them thinking perhaps there was something good about man after all. By God, there had to have been something better than the death that was facing them in those trenches. And when you're tired and heartsick and broken, God will do.
He was older too, he was 54, so he literally a father-like figure. He could just talk to you about life. Anything, any concerns you had, he could talk to you. He would keep it off record, so if the guys had to spill their guts, Canon Scott was there to listen.
Can you imagine, like, in the middle of all this mess, you've got this one guy who's offering you nothing but human decency. And that's what it comes down to, is this is what you're dealing with every day, and a man comes up to you and says, well, here's a cigarette, and here's a piece of chocolate, and I'll listen to what you have to say, and I'll try to help.
This film is about war, but it's also a love story. The story of Papineau and the love of country that drove him to war. It's the story of him falling in love with a woman he has never met. It was a custom to give soldiers someone to write back home, a stranger they could pour out their feelings to. Papineau is given the name of Beatrice Fox, a 25-year-old Philadelphia sculptress.
Dear Miss Fox, you will be surprised to receive this letter. If I am a little obscure or erratic, you must forgive me, as I am in a dugout within 100 yards of the Boche, and they send an occasional rifle grenade or whiz-bang in my direction. Since August, I have been a licensed killer. Since January, I have tried to kill. I have succeeded in not being killed, at any rate. Out of 40 officers, I am the only one neither killed, nor wounded, nor sick. Rather a record of good fortune, but a record which may be broken this evening, or in 10 minutes for all I know. Living on such volcanoes destroys my sense of decorum. I should sleep, but the fresh adventure of writing to an unknown rather appealed to me. Would you forbid me the appeal and deny a poor soldier?
In August 1914, the Germans started war on the Western Front by invading Belgium and France. To aid their allies, the English army, bolstered by a Canadian battalion, arrived in France just in time to help stop the Germans capturing Paris. Now both sides couldn't budge the other, so they all dug in, constructing a trench line stretching from Switzerland 500 miles north to the English Channel. Canada's war started in Flemish Belgium, in Flanders fields. St. Julian, Belgium, the 22nd of April, 1915.
And this is what the Canadians see here, you know, they're in the rear areas playing a game of football, knocking it around. But suddenly, you imagine, someone hears something, you know, boom, what the hell is that? Boom, boom, boom. And you see in the far distance this suspicious yellow cloud, and it doesn't look right. Your sixth sense tells you this is not good. Well, what could it be? You're trying to dismiss it, and it's getting closer.
The Canadians are about to be attacked by a weapon of mass destruction, poison gas. The Germans have been waiting for weeks for the right winds. Now they have come.
Remember, chlorine hugs the ground. It's particularly menacing. It's heavier than air, so it creeps along the ground, wafted by the winds. It's just coming ominously closer to you.
George Muggleton's great-grandfather fought through the gas attack.
In my diaries, my grandpa said they were back and they smelled a strange smell and they thought it was lyddite shells. It was just kind of had that funny smell in it, that they weren't sure what was going on.
Look for the enemy! How's the horn? Enemy flag! All rounds, independence! Rapid! Fire!
The boys quickly stood to and fought. Now, some say it was the VC winner, Captain Scrimger, or it could have been a group of people who took chemistry at McGill or elsewhere, who remembered that this may be chlorine gas, and when it hits wet cloth, chemically it'll turn into crystals.
Piss on your handkerchief! Piss on your handkerchief! Piss on your handkerchief!
Some officers screaming at you, piss on your handkerchief, piss on your handkerchief, and you first thought the man's gone mad. Imagine, there you are, trying to reach for your rifle, which may be a Ross rifle, which may be suddenly jammed just when you're trying to reload.
In the fog of war, reports of what is happening here are filled with confusion. To find out for himself, Greg Kelly's great-grandfather gets on his horse and heads for the front. The first hint to Canon Scott comes from a runner.
Soldier? Sir, they're using gas.
To avoid panicking the oncoming reinforcements, Canon Scott makes the soldiers swear an oath.
Those boys are going to the battlefield anyway. I want you to promise me that you will not say a word. Do you promise me?
I promise, sir. Where are we going, sir?
Depends on what kind of lives we've lived, boys.
Braking and running is not an unusual or unnatural reaction. Braking and running in front of that and gas, where you have no defenses, is perfectly normal. You'd expect that. The Canadians don't. In other words, the boys quickly stood to and fought. Standing in the blood and vomit, holding wet handkerchiefs to their mouths, they fought and totally shocked the Germans, because it was the last thing they expected. You know, a line that held, a line that fought, a line that was even prepared to counterattack right in this area.
In the middle of the horror is a battlefield surgeon named John McCrae.
Hold still.
Tents where McCrae operated early in the war gave way to bunkers, better to protect the wounded from German shell fire. Now it's all part of a memorial. to a poem, marking the spot where a Canadian battlefield surgeon spent 15 minutes scribbling a few lines of poetry.
I'm not sure what to say to Canadians. Dr. Colonel McRae, he's fundamental to us. The poem is fundamental. It inspired both.
Sandy Gow is descended from John McRae.
What's the most interesting is how honest he was about his feelings towards the war. He said to his mother, I don't want to go. He had been to the Boer War already. He knew what it was, and he said, I'm afraid, but I feel as a Canadian and as a bachelor that I have an obligation to go and fight. And I think he was always really burdened by that sense of responsibility, and he always felt that whatever he was sacrificing was never quite enough.
The poem is prompted by the death of a young friend, a protege of McRae he taught at McGill. As his commanding officer, McRae conducts the burial service.
We commit to the soil the mortal remains of Alexander Harmer. May he rest in peace.
It's a nice thought to see him perhaps in a one quiet moment, resting, thinking about his friend. And
in Flanders fields the poppies blow between the crosses, row on row that mark our place. And in the sky the larks, still bravely singing, fly scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved. And now we lie in Flanders fields.
And then he becomes undoctor-like. He becomes belligerent. He becomes defiant. He seeks revenge.
Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields.
And you can say, well, that's not really that Canadian, the way we've been taught now. Doctor, humanitarian, loves his fellow man. It's not. It's Colonel McRae, a gunner, a Canadian fighting here who's just lost his friend, and he reacts as a man would. He reacts the way a soldier would. Take up our quarrel with the foe.
It's almost like we should have all of the youth of Canada stand here, and then they'll finally understand in Flanders fields. I take the last verse differently than I've ever taken it before, standing here now. Kind of like what you were saying, where you just suddenly, you felt closer to him than you'd ever before. And the torch that he's holding up, or torch that we are supposed to hold up, is really illuminating the darkest parts of the war.
A few words of encouragement Canon Scott utters before this battle comes back to haunt him.
Who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name.
Before the battle, I passed down the line and told them they had a chance to do a bigger thing for Canada than had ever been done before. The words later became a watchword, for the men said that whenever I told them that, it meant that half of them were going to get killed.
Frankie Boston is an expert on the battles of Flanders fields.
In that very narrow area on the Ypres front, there are, on German, French and the British side, about 200,000 men are missing. Now, about half of them has a grave in the cemeteries, a soldier of the Great War. There is a grave, but we don't know who is in it. And the other 100,000, they're just somewhere here, somewhere under the fields.
For as much as it hath pleased Almighty God of his great mercy to take unto himself the souls of our dear brothers here departed, we therefore commit their bodies to the ground. Earth to earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust.
Of the 12,000 soldiers in the Canadian 1st Division, 6,000 are killed, wounded, or missing. 2,000 have no known grave.
This belt buckle, the ground surrendered it for you. This is the God of War's offering to you this day. It came out of the ground this morning, picked up by the farmer as he plowed the field, because the earth often surrenders her treasures at the oddest times, and it's still shining. Someone's belt buckle, perhaps from an officer, Sam Brown, who fought and died, or perhaps fought and was wounded, but right here, right in this area. So this is our first introduction, our grad ball to World War I. We arrive, we are hit with the foulest sort of and latest scientific marvel. Talk about shock and awe in Iraq. This is shock and awe at a big scale. This is not just a German division attacking, it's a couple of armies preceded by pretty hot corps with their finest troops. And the Canadian division, untested, untried, stands, fights, and holds. And we had fallen, there is Paris, about a day and a half away. You know, the final breakthrough. So this was, to everyone concerned, an important battle, and a battle I think we're justifiably proud of.
This column marks the battlefield where 18,000 Canadians withstood the first German gas attacks, the 22nd to 24th of April, 1915. "2,000 are buried nearby with no known grave."
And these guys, they did it, you know? Like, they held the line, and they were tough. There was the solidarity in that group of people, those thousands of soldiers, to stay there. They must have known the strategic importance of that spot. They had to keep it. And they pissed in their shirts and whatever they did to be able to withstand that attack. Go into a counterattack the day after, facing that weird weapon. You know, that I think that defines tough.
So you guys know so much, and it's just so refreshing to know how much love you have for this country. And I've really forgotten that.
Sir, let me just do it.
I feel quite triumphant. I have succeeded in my venture to draw you into the vortex of my correspondence. When you accuse your hair of being red, and your eyes nondescript gray, and your complexion freckled, I can accuse you of false modesty. I understand you possess chameleon hair and eyes. You confess to a fondness for ice cream sodas. Hail, fellow mortal. Well met, kindred spirit. May we someday cluster around a fountain. My tongue is flannel at the thought. This morning, as I came up the steps of my dugout, I saw a little green bunch of clover and was reminded that I had not thanked you for the four-leafed ones that you sent me.
It wasn't all war all the time. No army could afford to fight all the time. So days, sometimes weeks, would go by with no action.
I am living in an old German dugout. We do our cooking on a little Primus stove, a wonderful invention which I always expect to explode at any time. Stuart, he is the most pronounced character I've met. We've been close since the beginning. He's been a Northwest mounted policeman, and a fur trader, and a Yukon gold digger. He has the vitality and appearance of Hercules, but remains normal by constant undermining operations, such as 50 cigarettes a day and the output of a whiskey factory. On the 14th of March, he was shot while we were withdrawing across the open. The colonel told me to get him in. He was very heavy, and 3 other men nearly failed. He protested violently and made an awful noise about the pain.
Jesus Christ!
The padre asked him if he wished him to pray.
Pray like hell, man!
Charlie, do you want me to write to anyone?
I promised to write to his various sweethearts and finally left him to die in the dressing station. He came back a few days ago, much to my delight.
I thought that's what all you did.
In 1914, in Nova Scotia, Will Bird's brother Stephen bade goodbye to his younger brother. Stephen was going off to war, but he made Will a strange promise. If I get killed and you come over, I will find a way to watch over you. One day, the fateful word comes. Stephen is missing, blown to pieces in battle.
So Will's brother was killed in action in the war, and so he went off to fight in the war as well. Bird's sleeping in this trench after a long night of working, and he feels this warm hand touch his body, and he looks up, and it's his brother, Stephen.
Stephen, what are you doing here? Stop.
And knowing that his brother Stephen is dead, he's just like, what are you doing here, Stephen? His brother just tells him to be quiet and turns around and keeps on walking. About 9 in the morning, some men from his own battalion come and they shake him and they're like, Bird, what are you doing here? Where you been? And he's like, how did you know how to get out of that where you were staying? He's like, what do you mean? He's like, we're picking up the pieces of the men that you stayed with, the pieces of their body. You know, they were blown up.
Dear B, your idea that we should meet at a bal masqué rather appeals to me. I wish to play the role of the mysterious soldier, pour out his expiring thoughts and experiences. And you the role of a friendly woman, somewhat uneasy about my fate, and in spare moments anxious to help me with friendly letters and occasional gifts. Just before turning in, that is, putting on a coat and lying down, I must tell you, you are the best correspondent I have ever had. A dream come true.
Hill 62, there you go. My grandfather, Dana, starts off in Zilbeck. You see the farmhouse on the left. Yeah. And if you just go straight up from that, you'll see the spires there. Yeah. In front of that, again, there's a little village. So that's where they are right there. They're in Zilbeck. There's a significant amount of black blood on my grandfather's side. Blacks weren't allowed into the combat arms because it was a white man's war and they couldn't be trusted. They were slower, they weren't as smart, and they couldn't be trusted with weapons. It was the caricature. Of course, in some counties it had to make up their quotas. It was more difficult to make the quota if you didn't accept blacks or people that were close to black into your battalion. And my grandfather's attestation papers, his complexion is described as swarthy, and on his discharge paper it's described as dark. So he manages to live through the Battle of Mount Sorel itself, and then when they come back into the line after a break, that's when he gets injured. He goes away, convalesces, volunteers to come back, and rejoins his unit on the 6th. 4 days after the battle starts, he rejoins his unit, and then he's back up here. He's back on the front.
Suddenly, a shell from nowhere reduces Dana Thompson's mates to small pieces of bloody flesh, to nothingness. Dana's medical record says it starkly. On June the 4th, a shell exploded near him, killing several of his comrades, and gave him nervous shock. The next document calls it shell shock.
This is why I came. This is where it all happened. This is where it all ended as well. My grandfather was a poor man. I came from a hard background, went back to a hard background, suffered from shell shock his entire life. Alienated his family, pushed his family away, wouldn't talk about his experiences, was subject to fits of rages, lived with his wounds his entire life, lived a very poor existence, very, very poor, literally scratching out a living and an existence in rural Nova Scotia. And this is where it all starts. I was incredibly proud today reading his war record. It mentioned that his wounds were sustained on duty facing the enemy. And as a professional soldier, I just can't imagine anything more important than to be facing the enemy, doing his job, having come from nothing and going back to nothing. It is very important right now, being here.
Jason Prince has been moving in the shadow of his great uncle John Patrick Tian, dipping into his journal at every spare moment.
He has basically given up any hope of going home. And he has, I think, opportunities to leave. And he keeps coming back. Right now, I don't quite understand why he's still there.
The Australians have a word for it. They called it mateship. And that's the most important thing. These guys, they might have belonged to a battalion. And certainly the officers and the men were very, very proud of the fact that they were a certain battalion. But actually, what you're really talking about is their section of men, that little tiny group that they live with, they fight with, they die with, they eat with. Everything revolves around a tiny handful of people.
Now Jason is searching for something, perhaps a name on memorial, anything to give the shadow some life. This is the Thiepval Memorial, Great Britain's monument to 73,000 soldiers missing from the Battle of the Somme. Though he was a Canadian, Tian rose through the ranks and ended up as an officer with the British Notts and Derby Regiment.
Second lieutenant.
On the memorial, his army existence comes down to a single chiseled name on the third line, shadowed by the setting sun, fading after 90 years. Tian, J.P.
These are the missing. These are the bodies that are buried somewhere in the ground here that surface occasionally. Bones. You just see all these names, but each one of these names is actually a life. It's a story. It's quite something. As I'm reading these diaries, I mean, I've read them before and I helped in the editing process, and as I read through them, I'm getting to know this guy. He was quite a funny guy.
The 13th of August, 1915. Desperate for a break from frontline horrors, Papineau takes off across the French countryside, looking for adventure.
The day has been gloriously warm and flooded with sunshine. In one field, I saw an old man building a wheat stack. It was irresistible. I tramped over, then told the old chap that I would take his place. I took off my cap and belt and coat, rolled up my sleeves, and seized his long-handled pitchfork. I learned how to move my feet so I should not stand on the end of the sheaf I was trying to toss. I learned to give a little shove at the end of the stroke to disengage the fork, just as we used to hoist the pole at Oxford when punting. The farmer's wife came out with a jug of cool beer. I hate beer. I've never taken more than a mouthful in all my life. But I felt too much a part of the picture not to join in the drinking. The perspiration soaked and dripped about me. It was magnificent. It was an adventure in contentment.
Scott Truman has come a long way from the wilds of Dragon Lake, British Columbia,
He shares a grave with his buddy.
in search of the grave of one of the 6 Truman brothers who answered the call to arms in 1914. 3 Truman boys are at the front when, in the middle of the night, their mother has a premonition.
But she just suddenly awoke in the middle of the night with fear that she had lost her son.
It isn't a nightmare, it's death. The letter she wrote to him the day he died was returned, killed in action. She writes another of her boys, Willie, who is about to be shipped out.
I had a very nice letter from the chaplain and one from his sergeant. They gave the dear lad much praise. I'm trying to look on the right side. I think I have given my share to this war. My eldest one missing, 1 killed, and 2 crippled, another fighting in France.
I think I've given enough.
Yeah. How much do you have to give to a war for it to be enough, right? Their glory shall not be blotted out.
In northern France, this is the Somme River. During the Great War, the Germans seized the heights beyond, while British forces spent most of the war trying to dislodge them. This is the Chateau Beaurepaire. Inside these walls in 1916, in great secrecy, a new scheme is drawn up by the Imperial British staff to break the German line. At battlefields like this, along a 24-kilometer wide front, there would be an immense artillery barrage, which of course would destroy the German defenses. The plan is controversial. It requires more than 200,000 British soldiers to form up, advance towards the German line in disciplined rows, and simply occupy what was left of the German trenches. Even the timing is controversial. Attacks launched in pre-dawn darkness are safest. Here the British would attack in the clear light of a midsummer morning. Later, the German machine gunners said it looked like the British were on a parade square. A caribou, the symbol of the Newfoundland Regiment, signals that this is the battlefield where the Newfoundlanders joined the massive British attack that day, the 1st of July, 1916. On a stone cairn, a poem hints that the plan did not work out well. Tread softly here. Go reverently and slow. Yea, let your soul go down upon its knees. The battlefield is the best preserved on the Western Front. You can even see the craters and the trenches where the men went over the top that July morning. Newfoundlander Sandy Gow is haunted by what happened here.
My ancestors aren't from Newfoundland, but it's where I was born, it's where I grew up. And the story of the July Drive is one I've known for as long as I can remember. The British had a bombardment set up that went on for days, and this was supposed to take out the German barbed wire, the German machine guns. But by the time we got to July 1st, the barbed wire hadn't been cut and the machine guns hadn't been taken out. One Newfoundland soldier made it over to the German trenches and back again to deliver the news that the German machine guns hadn't been taken out and the barbed wire hadn't been cut. And his report was dismissed as the nervousness of men who were facing battle for the first time.
The German soldiers facing the Newfoundlanders are from the 119th Reserve Regiment. They are outnumbered 7-1 by the British attackers, but they have the Maxim machine gun, capable of firing 8 bullets a second, 500 a minute. It is dismissed as an overrated weapon by Britain's top generals. The Newfoundland Regiment, which would be part of the third wave of attackers, watch as the 1st British Regiment go over the top. It is the South Wales Borderers. Within minutes, out of 800 borderers attacking, 21 officers and 578 men are down. Frantic messages are dispatched to headquarters. But at the Chateau Beaurepaire, the British generals are in full denial, refusing to believe that the first attack could have ended so badly. They conclude the men must have failed to attack. They ordered the second wave over the top. It's the Middlesex Regiment, 750 men attacking, and within 30 minutes, 22 officers and 500 men are gone. Despite the catastrophic failure of the first 2 assaults, the Newfoundlanders are told they must prepare to attack. The 1st of July, 1916, 9:37 a.m. All along a 40-kilometer front, a great disaster is befalling the British Army. A wave of wounded coming back from the battlefield throws the Newfoundland front line into total chaos. Surely, they would not be ordered to go into this. British headquarters could not believe the reports that the attacks were a disaster. So the message is sent back from headquarters. The Newfoundlanders must attack.
Go, go!
Having repelled 2 British attacks, the Germans watch in disbelief as another advance moves towards them. They wait for the Newfoundlanders to come closer.
This is the danger tree. And they called it the danger tree because it was the most dangerous place on the battlefield. It was the only place where they'd actually managed to cut the barbed wire. So all of the soldiers were making their way towards here. And the machine guns, all they had to do was point and fire. And one of the German soldiers said that there were so many of them coming that if they had charged, they would have overwhelmed them. But they were still under this command to march over and not to charge. One of the soldiers that survived the advance said that the machine gun fire was so heavy that the soldiers would automatically tuck their chins into their coats like they were walking through a snowstorm in a Newfoundland outport. Only it wasn't snow or hail, it was machine gun fire.
The Newfoundland Regiment suffers 90% casualties. Every officer is killed or wounded. One British officer watching the attack calls it a splendid example of disciplined valor. It failed, he said, because dead men can advance no further. 710 Newfoundlanders join a casualty list of over 57,000 from that black morning. It is one of the greatest disasters in the history of the British Army. At the Chateau Beaurepaire, the British general commanding is Douglas Haig. Haig never visits battlefields, saying the sight of casualties might sap morale, his own. He declares the Battle of the Somme a victory. After it's over, he is promoted to Field Marshal, commanding all the armies of the Empire, including Canada's. At the outset of the war, Newfoundland was like Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, a self-governing dominion. Those 22 minutes on this battlefield in France changed Newfoundland and Newfoundlanders for all time.
I mean, you've got St. John's, and that's the big city, but then you've got all along the coast are outports, and from every one, these men went and volunteered, as if 500 went right away. Sort of the core group of men from each one of these communities, and they weren't coming home again. Just imagine, you're a woman, maybe you've got 3 to 5 children in a very small community where you depend on each other to sustain your life. And you lose your husband, you lose your father, you lose your 2 brothers. You know, how do you get by? And that was the beginning of this downward spiral from Newfoundland. Suddenly, we couldn't support ourselves anymore, and eventually Confederation became an issue. You know, what do? Do we stay where we are? People are starving in the outports. Do we keep going this way, or do we join with Canada and have them help us? And I think a lot of that began with World War I, with our losses here at Beaumont Hamel. For all of us here, July 1st is Canada Day, but for so many people back home, it will always be remembered as the day that we lost some of the best people from our island. And for them, I'd like to sing the Ode to Newfoundland. When sun rays crown thy pine-clad hills, and summer spreads her hand, when silvern voices tune thy rills, we love thee, smiling land. We love thee, we love thee, we love thee, smiling land. As loved our fathers, so we loved. Where once they stood, we stand. Their prayers we raise to heaven above. God guard thee, Newfoundland. God guard thee, God guard thee, God guard thee, Newfoundland. The Newfoundland.
Confound this war. It's horrible. I hate it. Heavens, what a peace lover I will be afterwards.
Everybody, this is Bob's. She's gonna bring us luck. Come see her. Yeah, aren't you? Aren't you?
Life will again be at the beginning if I survive. All opinions, ambitions, decisions hang suspended, awaiting the verdict of chance. In the meantime, I have moments of gaiety with companions, moments of sadness when I think of home, and black, black moments when I question myself, my courage, and even the final success of our cause. For a while, I thought too vividly. I pictured the homecoming, the glad celebrations which you promise. Then the wish to live became maddeningly dear. The less I wished to put my head above the parapet, and the more acute the inner throb when a machine gun barked, and I thought of the time to come when I should have to charge into that rain of bullets, and then suddenly cease to be. It is a great mistake for a soldier to have too keen an imagination, or to allow his thoughts to dwell morbidly on his dangers. I now cultivate a sort of daredevil carelessness.
On the main autoroute running from the English Channel to Paris, a sign draws the traveler's eye towards a distant memorial. It's a battlefield in northern France. So great was the Canadian sacrifice here that France deeded this ground to the people of Canada forever. There are more than 11,000 Canadian pine and maple trees planted here. One for every Canadian killed in France, but who has no known grave. The names of that battalion of the lost are also chiseled into the limestone walls of the monument. For the 90th anniversary of the battle, Canada decided to give them a $1 million facelift. A supervisor of reconstruction for the Commonwealth War Graves Commission says the memorial has a sacred spirit. Peter Craven.
I believe it does have a soul. It's a hard thing to put into words, but I've always liked working on it. All the sculpted groups show all the human values: compassion, hope, faith, charity, peace. And when I talk to Canadians, I'm usually surprised by the amount of feeling they have for Vimy. It matters a lot.
Vimy Ridge. Some say a country was forged here. Next on the Great War, Canada's demand that she finally fight together as a national army is granted. The cost is chiseled in stone and written in blood. The grief and glory of the Great War, moments of heroism leading to a lifetime of loss. After Vimy, the agony of Passchendaele, and the final chapter in Papineau's love story.